Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day everyone. So on behalf of University Malaysia Pahang, UMP Strategic Plan Workshop Organising Committee, we are very honoured today to have Puan Anita binti Ahmad to present a topic that is related to building a resilient community via community engagement. So this 45-minute presentation slot is targeted for UMP staff and students. The aim of this slot is to raise awareness on the importance of organizational community engagement, strategies for impactful community engagement, and case studies of successful community engagement projects. My name is Nurul Hazlina binti Noordin. I am from bahagian Kolaborasi Industri dan Masyarakat or Division of Industry and Community Network, UMP, will be moderating the session for today. Before we get started, there is few announcement here. So our webcast today is at live via YouTube channel as well as on Facebook page. Please be patient if you experience any technical or internet glitches during the webinar. If the session is disconnected abruptly at any point of time, please hang on tight as we will definitely be right back. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing in your questions into the comment sections via YouTube or Facebook. We will collect these questions and address them during question and answer session at the end of this webcast. If you would like to contact us, please email us at icon@ump.edu.my. Now, before I hand this session over to Puan Anita, let me read a brief overview of Puan Anita. So Puan Anita is currently the lead for community development and humanitarian disaster in response in Hasanah Foundation. It is a foundation under of Hasanah National Berhad. So in this role, Puan Anita drive the organization's community-based socio-economic strategies and support the capacity building for the non-profit ecosystem. Puan Anita also leads various multi-stakeholder partnership such as the government GLC, Demi Rakyat and Negara GDRN, and NGO initiative in responding to humanitarian needs during natural disasters and during COVID-19 pandemic. So Puan Anita has a very vast experience, 20 years experience in different capacities in the non-profit sector, including the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, in Malaysia and the NGO Mercy Malaysia. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Puan Anita on stage. So Puan Anita, Assalamualaikum, apa khabar?
Waalaikumsalam. Alhamdulillah, very good, thank you.
Okay, on behalf of UMP, we would like to thank you for your time to spend with us today. As I had mentioned earlier in our conversation just now, that this workshop is mainly targeting students and also staff to have a proper plan before enrolling or before doing engagement with the community. So without further ado, I pass this session to you, Puan Anita.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nurul. Can I just check whether I can see my presentation? Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. So thank you very much to Dr. Nurul, as well as, of course, University Malaysia Pahang for this invitation. I'm very honored to be here with all of you today. I would also like to congratulate UMP on many different awards that I saw in the video, and also congratulate the university on starting community engagement work. Yeah? I think that's quite critical that any university working in education gives back to the community. So I'm happy to share some of the work that we do in Yayasan Hasanah. Yeah? So I'll just start with giving, I think that in order to contextualize the work that we do on community development in Yayasan Hasanah, I thought I would introduce the foundation. So, and just to mention, the first thing that a lot of people ask whenever they hear the word Yayasan Hasanah, they always ask me, is Hasanah somebody's name? And then I wanted to clarify, no, actually we chose the name Hasanah because it means kebaikan or kindness. So that's one of the underlying principles of everything that we do in Yayasan Hasanah, inshallah, is for us to do goodness and kindness in everything that we do in Hasanah. So just to explain, it's not anybody's name. And I just wanted to share, I'm not sure why the presentation is not showing, but never mind, some of the photos are missing. So it is a foundation of Khazanah National. It was set up in 2015 and building upon 9 years of corporate responsibility work of Khazanah before. But Khazanah found that in the past, when they operate, they tended to look at profits of Khazanah before they allocated funds, which then sometimes does not allow for long-term development work for nation building in Malaysia. So because of that, then Khazanah had the foresight to set aside an endowment for us to work to provide funding to different organizations to do work in different areas. But so these are our board of trustees. So our chairman is Tan Sri Muhammad Noor Yusof. He's a very respected corporate figure. He's been the chairman of several big corporate corporations such as Malaysia Airlines and currently in Mbank. We have Caroline Russell, and then we have Tunku Zakri, as well as Datuk Shahira, who also acts as our managing director, and Datuk Amirul Faizal Wan Zahir, who's also the managing director for Khazanah at the moment. And I think what I really wanted to emphasize is that quite often when people hear Yayasan Hasanah, they think that we are just a grant-making organization, but of course, certainly that's what we do. But we look towards working in collaboration and coordination with many different parties. We also look at transforming the ecosystem. So we look at very long-term developmental work. And so that's why you see like, things like I say, together we build a better nation. We are looking at nation building. And we are focusing on 5 different areas: education, community development, environment, arts and public spaces, as well as knowledge. Yeah? So basically, we have 2 principles. Basically, Khazanah creates value, and then of course that goes towards growing the economy of Malaysia, and we do the value distribution. Basically, I always put it simply: Khazanah makes money, we spend money lah, in order to do good. Yeah, to put it very simply. And Khazanah put aside a 3 billion endowment, and from the endowment we use the dividends in order to do our work. Yeah, so again, so we are not dependent on a year-to-year budget. We can think about long-term, meaningful social change. Yeah? And like I mentioned, so we don't only provide grants, although that's a large part of what we do, but we play as a convener, collaborator, and catalyst of change. So what does this mean? Convener, we bring parties together. So that's why, I will share later on. When you talk about community engagement, it's a lot wider. Yeah? So when the definition of community, there's many definitions of what community is. It's not just maybe what we might typically think that a community is only those who live in kampungs or PPRs or in nearby as your neighbors. It's far bigger than that. And so we look at bringing different parties together. We really believe in collaboration. Because we believe that collaboration will have a bigger impact. And while we don't we are quite particular about the kind of projects that we choose, because we want to choose projects which are catalytic, meaning things that will spur new thoughts, new innovation, new ways of doing things, and that will have sustained change. So it's not like doing the day-to-day things. So we want to look at new approaches largely. And then sometimes we kind of pilot or sustain some pilots within the community to see substantive change. Yeah? And like I said, we work with different parties, we work with policymakers, civil society organizations, corporations, local communities to enable collective impact. Yeah? So Alhamdulillah, from 2015 to 2021, we have allocated more than 1 billion towards 477 projects with 365 partners, and we've reached more than 2 million people through these different areas of work. And just to mention that initially we did begin with funding from Yayasan Hasanah, but because of the COVID pandemic and because of our previous engagement with Ministry of Finance, they saw the need to deploy help to the Rakyat as quickly as possible. So while they allocated funds, of course, to recover from the pandemic via the typical government agency, they also allocated some funds to Yayasan Hasanah for us to then divert to our partners, which are primarily NGOs as well as social enterprises. And the reason they did that is because these organizations are more grassroots, yeah? And more, they know the issues on the ground. They're able to usually work faster and a lot cheaper, to be very honest. Or I would say more economical lah. Kita jangan guna perkataan cheap lah. It's more economical, and they can stretch the dollar because they're more mobile and resilient. And so this part of this numbers that we reach is also thanks to the funding provided by Ministry of Finance together with Yayasan Hasanah funding. And I just wanted to quickly explain. So the way that we do our work is that we provide grants. We have quite a strict eligibility criteria. We look at not short-term projects. So we don't do typical CSR one-off touch and go projects. We do long-term, which is why then we really emphasize on the importance of community engagement. Because in order to have long-term impact, you must engage with the community, which I'll expand a lot more later. And we have but at the same time, we also have other funds that look at short-term needs, like for example, humanitarian disaster relief funds. So we are on standby now because tengah musim monsoon kan. So we always, every year we have funds allocated for humanitarian disaster. So this is for short-term need macam food aid, hygiene kits and so on, but also for recovery, like for example, if the house needs to be fixed or if there needs to be cleaning done, we also do that. And again, we work with largely NGOs and social enterprises. And then we also have funding for research for our own purposes. Basically, if you want to look at certain studies to and evidence towards why we choose certain projects. And lastly, quite importantly, just to explain very quickly because it's relevant to this talk, is that while we do long-term funding for certain community projects, sometimes when we plan for a project, we cannot predict what can happen within the community during that time. So we have what we call a community support fund. It's much smaller, only up to 10,000 ringgit, in case there are things that come up that we want to build the trust of the community. So I give you an example. One of our projects we have an Orang Asli project in Kuala Langat. So we have a long-term program which is to build the capacity to be able to earn income through ecotourism as well as agriculture and to improve their food security. But along the way, they want ada kerosakan. And then di tempat semayang orang asli tu pun rosak, So they are struggling to improve this when it's important to the community. So we provide funds for that. This helps to build our trust. So we want to tell them, look, we are not only there through a very long-term structure, but we also address your short-term needs. And also, they can also access humanitarian disaster funds. So this is to show our commitment that it's not just about, we don't just want to support you in one way. We acknowledge that you have a lot of issues, and therefore we try as much as possible to address those issues within our sort of ability lah. So that's just to give some relevant information when we work with communities. Now, very quickly, I just wanted to show that because Dr. Nurul, you mentioned that this is part of your strategy workshop. So in Hasanah, everything that we do is built on strategies. So this is just to show that this is our next 5-year strategy. So we had a lot of discussion and workshops similarly to what you're doing to develop this. So we have education, community development, environment, arts and public spaces. I will focus more on community development, where we are looking to enable social and economic empowerment to vulnerable communities as a means to improve their well-being. We used to look at the word resilience, but we felt that was a little bit more complex. So we are now very focused on general well-being, meaning their health, their ability to access better health facilities, their mental health, and anything that influences their well-being. And we are very focused because we don't want to do too many things. So in Yayasan Hasanah, we are very much focused at looking at community livelihood. That means their ability to earn income. And we also look at building their leadership skills, which I'll explain a little bit more what we mean by that. And then we look at the enablers. So under our enablers, we look at, of course, our grants, but we also acknowledge that in order to be able to deliver our strategy, we look at doing some kind of sometimes research if there's a need. We have a very robust monitoring and evaluation. So any projects that we do, we really monitor very closely because we don't want to spend money for nothing. We want to make sure that there is impact. And the only way that we will know if there's impact is if we are clear about what objectives we are trying to meet. So we develop KPIs within the project. We have milestones, and then we measure through different reporting systems. Yeah? So this is quite important for us to know because we don't want to blow our horn lah, kata kita tolong Malaysia. So we want it to be based on evidence. So we do ask a lot of reporting from our organizations, and we look at the capacity to be able to collect this data, which I will show some of the data later on. And then we believe in communications. Communications is a very important aspect of what we do. At the same time, we also believe in capacity development. That means sharing lessons learned with all the stakeholders that we work with, which is why I do this kind of talks. Part of this is our belief in giving back to communities like yourself in order to raise your understanding or share also some of the lessons that we went through. And like I said, and if you look at internal capabilities as well, so I always, every year I aim to train myself in something new, because just because I've been 20 years. Yesterday I sat next to a minister, he asked me, so you've been doing this for 20 years, so I guess you know everything. I said, no, I don't know everything. I'm always eager to learn, because you can never know everything. So Alhamdulillah, in Hasanah also we are a believer in learning, and we work in partnership and collaboration, which I'll also expand more later. Yeah. So now I wanted to share this. I'm not going to go into detail about this presentation, because I'm mindful of time and I don't want to go into complexities. But I wanted to show you that when we develop a strategy, we really looked at many different things. Yeah. So we really looked at what is the problem statement, to put it simply lah. So in this case, we are looking at livelihood, meaning we want to increase the income of B40 to be able to earn more. Very simple, right? But what is the problem now? What we are looking at, what is the current statistics? In our case, we look at national statistics lah. In your case, I don't know, maybe you want to look at Pahang, or maybe at the district level. That's up to you. But we have a situation on what are the issues, and then because along the way as we were developing the strategy to COVID happen, we also then had to include what are the challenges of COVID. Yeah, so very broadly, of course, we know that a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people couldn't go out to work, and a lot of people were even fresh graduates found it difficult to find jobs. So you must understand the situation of the community that you're working with in order for you to then develop strategies. Then after that, we looked at, okay, we've identified the problems. What are the key areas that would be able to solve their problems? So we don't claim to be able to do everything, but then we identified, okay, 4 different areas that we thought that we may be able to help this community solve when they want to earn an income. And we looked at financial stability. We looked at the second block of health and well-being. We looked at their welfare needs, because those who are B40, their issue is not always about money. Their issues also have other multiple complex things. Sometimes, one of the key things for those with B40 is nutrition or access to health services, especially if they live remotely. And then the last block is also looking at the environment where they live. So that can also be a challenge. So in Pahang, as you know, there are many of those who live in perkampungan, pendalaman. It takes hours, especially during banjir. So you need to look at that situation. So we didn't identify everything, but we identified what are the 4 things that we could possibly address. But then we went to the next level. Then we looked at in terms of our capacity. Can we do it or not? So yes, Anita has 20 years of experience, but can she do everything? No, she cannot. Does the team have, do we have internal capacities in the team to do everything? No, we don't. So we looked at that. Plus we analyzed, okay, we look at all our resources financially. We looked at the ecosystem, the NGO partners, and we thought, okay, we cannot do everything. Let's focus on empowering B40 communities with the necessary economic capacities, meaning we just look at increasing their income. We are not looking at so much making sure that they get access to, for example, access to hospitals or clinics. We'll do that as a secondary thing, but not primary. We don't look at their housing environment. So we work in a lot of PPRs, but we're not going to be there to improve, because it's beyond our capacity and funding. However, because issue tu memang ada, we don't ignore it completely, but we do it in a different way. So this is where we work through networking and capacity building. So we do it as a secondary thing lah, and then we do advocacy. So part of me doing these talks is me also sharing with you what are some of the issues and what we have found in terms of some of these problems and how we have seen others solve the problems. So it's a lot of sharing and advocacy, and I also am invited to many panel discussions with different, even with government, with policymakers, universities, and this is where I contribute in terms of just sharing. But the work and grants is primarily on income. So we're very clear, because kita tak nak buat too many things, yeah. Now, secondly, so when based, so Hasanah has been around for 8 years. I've been doing this for a long time. What we found is di Malaysia ni kebanyakan we are very top down, yeah. That means orang suruh kita buat, ataupun orang kata you got this problem, you just setujulah here. So there's no what we call bottoms up approach, ataupun we find a lot of communities, because of the system that we live in, that they are not able to actually voice out or believe in themselves that they can do the work. So we in a very crude term, orang kata banyak kali dia dependent on bantuan, which is largely true, but it's not anybody's fault. It's something that has somehow carried through the system. But when we worked with communities, we actually found that the more we train them, the more we get to know them, and we really appreciate them, you find that they have the capacity, but they need to be supported. And when they're supported, and when those who don't speak up, especially like, if I give you an example, if you go into a gathering lah, and I'm sure doctor you find it among your students kan, kita tanya, okay, ada apa-apa soalan ke tak, semua diam. So that's disempowerment. You are not brave. Whereas I went to, I studied both locally and the UK. When I was in Malaysia, memang I was also pendiam lah, walaupun nakal dan pendiam. In UK, I was forced to speak up, and I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. So now I know, because of my exposure and all that, I can speak up anywhere. And then I am able to express better what I want, what I think, and what are the problems. But we find in communities that they don't do that. And then balik-balik, what you find is the same person speaking. But once we found that we invested in some people, particularly I have to say women, suddenly not only are they confident in themselves, they are able to support the community to do different things. And we saw this a lot during the COVID, di mana sebab kita dah train community leaders, dia sendiri akan beritahu kita, okay, tempat ni ada keperluan, tempat tu ada keperluan, ini yang tak dapat lagi, better than the ketua kampung. Sebab dia among the community. So these are lessons learned that we said that, okay, we want to invest in community leadership for them to be able to help themselves. Kita sebagai orang luar sepatutnya tak datang lah selalu. And just to share also, in part of my improvement of myself, like I said, I'm continuously learning. I did my master's when I was 30-something. I also did a fellowship when I was 40-something. And in my fellowship, that's what I saw in the US. I spent 2 months in the US. And I found that all the communities that we worked in, actually the leaders at different levels were from the community, bukan orang luar. Asalnya daripada dekat situ. So di Philadelphia, I went to a Chinese community. It was American Chinese taking over their development. I went to very deep into Central America, to a Native American city. All the leaders that spoke were Native American. They were not white people or black people speaking on their behalf. So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, why don't I see that here in Malaysia? So this is something that we want to do. And they speak, but they speak well. They present their problems well. So it's not like dia malu-malu nak cakap, but dengan cara dia lah. So that was, I thought, a very good lesson. And we've been doing that in Malaysia quite successfully. And so again, we identified certain building blocks. Like I said, we cannot do everything. Like, for example, a lot of, I won't go into this too much to get complex, but there's a lot of governance issues within communities macam kampung dengan PPR. But we look at what we can directly affect in terms of the individuals. And the idea is that when we go into communities, most communities dia ramai orang, kita tak boleh tolong semua. But how can we have rippling effect? The rippling effect is we deal with the community leader, either an existing one or new ones, and kita create a way that they can help others within their community. So that is our sort of sustainability approach lah. Sebab we cannot be anywhere forever, so something to think about. So because of that, we now develop leaders who can self-organize, meaning kita train them to be able to organize events, to organize projects. Jangan kita orang luar asyik nak buat untuk mereka. Actually, they can do it themselves. They're already doing it, but we want them to be a bit more structured. And then we also get them to lead. So we have different ways of doing that. Okay, so I wanted to share with you now, in terms of community development, quite often people don't really think about what community development is. Of course, there are many interpretations in terms of community development, but I wanted to share, I think it's quite important when UMP students, when you look at community development, take the effort to find out what it means. So a lot of people make a lot of assumptions. And to be honest, partly why I'm very passionate about this is actually, I don't think people really look at working with communities. They tend to look at groups of people. Maknanya, semua women. A typical type of help is untuk single mothers lah. That's everybody's favorite target group. Ataupun B40, ataupun children and all that, which is fine. Of course, that's perfectly fine. But I don't see many projects or people looking at communities as a whole, the whole kampung, the whole issues within the kampung, rather than looking at individuals. And something that we forget is, a lot of us have forgotten that we used to do a lot more gotong royong and work as communities together, and we are stronger when we work together. Now we have become quite westernized. Kita very individualized. Kita look at our self needs, our nuclear family. But when we bring people together, actually, especially in certain areas, not all, it doesn't work in every place, we find that a lot more can be done as a collective. That's one. Number two, so when you look at communities, you can look as a group of individuals, or you can look in terms of their common beliefs. Yeah? So it can be a group of, or common identity. So a group of single mothers is a typical communities of a group of people with common identities. So that is what we call people-based communities. Or they can have common interests. So maybe a group of artisans. So Hasanah works with a lot of artisans. So that's one group of community. It's people-based. And then you have another type of community, which is, I'm not going to name all, but just give some examples. Another community would be a community with shared assets. So, there are communities that have shared assets, meaning maybe they have a river, and there are certain assets within the river, and all of them share a common shared resources. They all use the river, so you can do projects out of a shared resource and development through that. In Hasanah's case, we are looking at place-based community development, meaning we will only work at a specific geography. We are very specific about that, which is why, just to mention, sometimes people come and apply for grants at Apart because we are so specific. And the reason is because we realize that we want to see meaningful change within the community rather than doing individuals. That one ramai orang buat. Kita nak tengok, can we actually grow a community? So we identify certain places. So I just wanted to share. Basically, it is normally about, and we want to look at the collaboration between people. So it's collaborative, long-term approach to building thriving communities delivered in a defined geographic location. It is ideally characterized by partnering and shared responsibilities and shared and joint efforts. It is very much looking at what is within the community resources. So that's the other thing I want to enforce. It is capitalizing. It is not taking one example of one fantastic project and you replicate. No such thing. So Malaysia is not a homogeneous group. Yeah? Even between different Malay groups pun lain. Kelantan lain, Terengganu pun ada slight different. Kalau border tu lain dengan dekat sikit dengan Kelantan, tapi masuk je Terengganu lain dah. Pahang memang lain dah. Kan? So, and within Pahang pun ada orang asli pun ada macam-macam orang asli, And then kalau you talk about macam dekat Negeri Sembilan, you dealing with Minang, kalau dekat Johor mungkin Jawa, and all these things. And actually each group actually has their own, and Sabah Sarawak of course, and then orang asli as well. So we need to acknowledge that they have their own ways of doing things, and I want to emphasize this about community engagement. Don't assume everybody is like you. Not everybody, walaupun perkataan Bumi Putra tu pun berlainan, perkataan Melayu tu pun berlainan, kita punya characteristics. So again, in communities, it's the same. So each have their own way. So when you do place-based, you get to understand actually the characteristics of that community, how they do things. And I find so far, Alhamdulillah, that when we understand that further, we spend a bit more time really understanding, then our projects actually have better impact. Yeah. So just to share our approach lah. So I'll go through this very quickly. So with all that thinking and analyzing and strategies and knowing what we want to do in geography, we have identified, we are very clear about our objectives. So number one, very quickly, we will look at supporting income generating projects. So we look at supporting head of household, single income families, single mothers, unemployed youth, especially income generation projects that can have a sustained impact. Yeah? So kita nak nampak. So for us, we are very clear. So unfortunately, we get a lot of proposals yang dia nak buat training saja. Kita tak boleh. You buat training, lepas tu apa? Dah lepas. So for us, training is not good enough. 1,000 and 10,000 people do training. But we want to see the impact, meaning lepas training and intervention, what will they use the knowledge for? Okay, so in this case, we train them on how to different ways of earning income. After they have learned how to do the income, we want to make sure that they implement it. Now, with the B40, people think that it's miraculously by 2 weeks you ajar dia orang dah boleh tahu. Tak. Macam student juga. I always tell people, kalau professor lah kena ambil berapa tahun nak jadi professor, kenapa kita expect B40 2 minggu belajar dan dah boleh jadi superstar entrepreneurship? It doesn't work that way. So our programs is actually, I'm not saying that you have to do this, but just some food for thought. Our programs minimum 3 years to 5 years. Itu pun, if I had my way, it'll be up to 10 years. That's what, because if you are a developmental expert, it takes 10 years for transformation. So we don't expect that to happen because it's not easy for many challenges, but we do look at proposals that look at this. What are they going to do with their knowledge, to actually implement their knowledge, and then we want to see the results of implementing that knowledge, meaning dia dah belajar, mungkin dia jadi entrepreneur, okay, dia dah belajar untuk how to market their product, Lepas dah market produk, dia mesti market lah produk dia kan. Katakan dia buat kat Facebook. Okay, fine. Kat Facebook, dia betul ke jual barang tu, dapat ke income ke tidak? Dan kita tengok, okay, dia dah earn income. Dan kita track every month, betul ke dia income? Jangan satu bulan aja, because entrepreneurship ni turun naik, ya. So our projects is very, very much thought out that way, ya. So that's how we measure impact. But it does take time. But just be clear about what is the objective and be realistic within the timeline lah. Number 2, for our leadership pun kita ada, okay, training first. Lepas tu kita get them to actually implement projects. So they use that knowledge to implement. Actually, we start slowly lah. We get them to build their confidence by co-facilitating with our NGO. So bila NGOs run program, kita bawa the leader sama, belajar macam mana organize. And then in some projects, kita bagi duit sikit, suruh dia organize. Jangan kita buat untuk dia. So they will organize the project. And then ultimately, our goal is for them to finally take an official position. So I'll show some example where we had one project. They started with informal leadership. Now they are actually in PIPG, they are in different JKK, in different forms. So that is for us really influencing and building the capabilities to take formal positions so that they can influence more. So all this, and in very specific locations, we are only choosing 7 communities across Malaysia for the next 5 years. So for this particular thing, yeah. And very quickly, because it is post-COVID, we also took on some other projects on income generation as well as mental health, because we were given some funding from MOF this year. Next year kita tak tahu lagi lah, ada new government kan, kita tunggulah tengok. But we also sometimes I think I wanted to share this because sometimes things happen to a country. So you may have a strategy. It's okay to fix it along the way. You don't have to fix, because sometimes new situation happens, right? So maybe in Pahang, mungkin ada big banjir, you need to tweak a little bit lah your strategy. That's fine. That's adapting to the current needs. So you always need to look at current needs lah, yeah? Okay, this is just a snapshot. I'm just mindful of time. A snapshot of all our projects. I just wanted to say we are across the whole country. We are a national organization. We do not look at race, religion, or anything. We go across. We support all races and religions and whatever beliefs that you have. We also work with stateless juga and undocumented as well. As long as you're living in Malaysia, you have the right to a good life, yeah. Based on needs lah. Kita memang ada projek kat Pahang. We have particularly projects on orang asli lah di Pahang, and I'm sure some others which I cannot remember sebab banyak sangat. Now, I just wanted to share in terms of measurement, yeah. So, like I mentioned before, memang kita tak habis kat training lah. Kita tak ada just buat pre and post training. So what we look at is actual impact. So first we look at how many people we assisted. So we have numbers. So after 5 years of projects, over 48 projects with 32 NGO and social enterprise partners, we have supported 2,500 micro entrepreneurs. Of that, we actually know 82% experience increased or new income. So both. So bila kita katakan increase, maknanya dia dah memang ada income from other sources. Kita dah mengajar them different ways of earning income, and then it grows. Yang new income pula, orang tu start at zero. Dia tak pernah income. And this is typical kalau housewife lah. Housewife yang tak pernah kerja, zero income, and we track after dia dah belajar jadi entrepreneur kat other program, berapa income dia naik, ya. We also track what is the increase of every month. So kita nak tahu sustainably, every month dia dah naik ke tidak. So we managed to reach average lah, 133%. And then we track also how much did they earn. Now, the how much is also important and lends to future strategies. I'm sorry to say that a lot of us say that kita tolong B40. I'm like, what does that mean, tolong B40 ni? B40 punya kategori is income. Meaning, income tu kita kena tengok lah, betul ke naik ke income ni, jangan kita short sendiri kata kita tolong dia kan. So, if you look at the household party 9, kalau you want to take them to M40, sepatutnya they should be earning more than 3,500. Have you really reached that or not? So we haven't, to be very honest. We know that we have increased income, but by knowing this data, we know, okay, we need to do more. But alhamdulillah, at least definitely it has improved the household income, because at an average, they're earning 750 more. But this is average. We have some superstars that have earned up to 5,000, 8,000. That's the superstar lah. Tapi kita buat average, yeah? And then we look at all these things. So quite important. Then we know, okay, at least the programs that we are supporting memang is working lah. Now, in terms of, then we looked at different type of entrepreneurs. This also lends to what we want to do in the future. So largely we do entrepreneurship program. Kita buat, we know that we are supporting largely, especially in urban areas, F&B. We support a lot of people to use their sewing skills to sell clothes and whatnot. we have supported those in the service sector. So we know, so this also helps us to then strategize for the next 5 years. What is it that we want to focus in? We have a lot more data, but this is just the top 9. Again, we looked at how many, so for community leadership, kita ada separate indicators. And we look at how many we have trained, how many became informal community leaders. So out of the 292 that we trained, we actually developed 131 of them to become community leaders. So quite localized lah. And then of this, how many projects did they implement? Because I mentioned for community leaders, we want them not only to learn, but to also implement the projects, right? And then finally, 62 of them managed to actually hold an official position of power. And it must become with a formal letter of appointment lah. So that's how we track, yeah. Okay, I don't have much time, so I just wanted to say we have developed within Hasanah what we call the community-based approach. This is our internal model of how we do our community development projects in different geographical location. Because as I mentioned, we have not really seen many people or many organizations really do community development the way that we are looking at it. So we wanted to document how we do it as much as possible and create some kind of model from a it's not academic based at the moment. It is very anecdotal. It is very much looking at our observation and our lessons learned from projects. Yeah. So basically, as I mentioned, communities have multiple issues, and we have identified the steps on how we want to do community development within communities. So we have come up with a model, which I won't go into much detail here. I wanted to just talk to you about our 2 models when we work in communities. Yeah? As I mentioned, we work with multiple partners. Now, when you work in any community, you cannot be sorang-sorang doing everything. It's impossible. And in some cases, actually, if you identify the community has got many problems, not everybody can do everything, or not one person can do everything. So what we do is that we try to work with multiple partners in one location. So we have brought up with our own model where we call it the community-based approach, the CPA, where first we will work with one organization, a very strong organization that will submit a proposal to work in a community. And typically they will look at income generating projects because that's our strategy. Once they are working there, we call them our backbone NGO. They have established themselves, they've gotten data, because getting data in this country is very difficult. I won't go into those kind of issues. So we cannot get statistics normally for us to do real evidence-based projects. So we have to do on the ground. So this will be our sort of partner that does that. So they will start doing their work on income generation in their own way and do different interventions. Along the way, if we find that the community is responding well and they have other needs, we will bring under category B, the green color, other types of NGOs to come in. So what we call our secondary partners. So the secondary partners will provide secondary support over 1 to 2 years. So this can be like, for example, some of our projects we found that because of COVID, their mental health was deteriorating. So we brought in other partners, or we found that they were having nutrition problems, especially among children. So we bring other partners. But this secondary partner will collaborate with the first partner to know more about the community. Because when you go into community, it's hard to collect data sebenarnya, unless you spend a lot of time and money. I mean, as researchers, you know this, right? It takes a lot of investment. So we need to do it, we do it through our partner. And then, and this one, usually the project is up to 1 to 2 years. Our first partner too will be a bit more long-term, not 3 to 5 years. And then sometimes other emergencies happen. So like, for example, again, because of COVID, a lot of people were running out of food. Then we realized that, our organization A and organization B, that's not their strength. We bring organizations that do food aid to come in. And this is what we call the third. And then we get all of them as much as possible to coordinate and to share information so that there is no tak ada berdinding. So a lot of times when we do work, everybody nak jadi hero, semua orang pergi ke tempat yang sama, not coordinated. So this it looks very easy on paper. It's quite difficult to do in real life, but we have done it, and I can show you an example. Yeah. So that is for addressing multiple issues in a community with multiple partners. Now we have found that some NGOs also are able to do all three. They're quite strong. They have enough resources, they have very good, well-trained staff, and they're able to do everything within 3 to 5 years. So I have a few partners who are like that, very, very, and they're made up of really people like me lah, who have got 20 years, not people who suddenly have a passion for helping others. These are the ones that need a lot more exposure, but these are the ones who is their career. So I always tell people I was only a volunteer in this sector for 3 weeks. After that, I was always paid. And I'm a professional in this sector. So, and I've worked with the UN. Before that, I worked with NGO. So, and then now I work on the funding side. So this is my career. So similarly, they have that kind of capacity. They have built that, and that's why they have the capabilities. They can do everything. So we are fine with that as well. But we want to make sure that they are able to do multiple things. And I'll give you the example after this. Yeah. Okay, I don't have that much time. So this is one of the projects that we did in PPR Lembah Subang. So it's a low-cost housing di Selangor. Many issues, usual issues like drug abuse, vandalism, macam-macam. And then we also identified, so when you work in a community, it's good for you to look at all these issues. Apakah problem dia? Sebanyak seboleh, ya? Whatever you can find. So with this one, we all did desktop, plus we verified through different people. So that methods of finding information, kita tengok, in fact, the distance to different facilities. Okay, we looked at the location, berapa jauh dia nak pergi ke sini, ke sana. Kita tengok siapa MP dia, what area and kawasan it's under. And it's very important to know under which municipality it falls under, because you may have to look at some of the issues around that, kan? And then we looked at, kat mana sekolah dia, dia punya berapa block, what is the population. We even looked at who manages the whole place, because in KL it's very complex. You think it's all under the BKL, but it's not. As soon as it's another border, it's somebody else. So you need to know that, so that you know who your stakeholders are. So we did all that. And then very quickly, through this, since 2016, we worked with 7 partners here. Okay, so these are all the different organizations under the different categories. Our main backbone is an organization called Women of Will. They provide microfinancing as well as entrepreneurship training, and they have managed to improve the income of our participants who are largely women. Yeah. And then we of course then brought in, after they got in, then to be very honest, I was told before this that this is I was asked, why do you want to work in this community? It's so difficult. It's one of the worst places you could ever work in. For me, I'm like, as somebody who has worked in Afghanistan and Sudan, you cannot tell me that lah. Lagi susah lagi saya nak pergi, sebab itu mana keperluannya, kan? So you must take on the challenge. That is a problem, and I'm like, look, there must be a way to solve it, right? So we entered with a good, strong partner. And we managed to reach 853 participants, but we are still doing more projects. We've done many things, and we've actually built a lot of the leaders there. And very short, I wanted to show you some of the individuals that we have helped. So I'll give you one profile, one story. So Kak No, when we first met her, Kak No was a lady who had just become a widow. So suami dia dah meninggal. She had 2 children, if I'm not mistaken, and she was already doing home-based business, but of course not enough income because she lost her partner, right, in order to earn income. So then she joined the program and she started doing training, and she was given a microloan of 2,000 ringgit, where then she started being able to rent a gerai outside and scale up her business using the 2,000 seed capital. Over time, then she also started getting trained as a leader. She became, before Kak No, kalau you meet her, dia tak pandang, tak bagi eye contact pun. Now, through training, she then started, she had so many orders, she started getting the women she had so many catering orders, dia tak boleh cope. She started passing the orders to the other women in the community, they share. And after that, she has started taking some leadership roles as well. Now, dulu this PPR ni banyak complaints pasal tak ada air and all that. Now the community said like, Kak No, ada problem lah kat community kita ni, tolong tulis surat pada authority, she will do it. This is the same person that I met a few years ago that doesn't even look at you in the eye, and you should hear her speak. I have been in many panels with her, as she speaks better than me, especially in BM lah. So, and she's able to articulate with such passion. On top of that, she set up a community center for youth. So from being, with all that capacity, so that youth from the community can come to that place, a safe place for them to study. So this is a solution coming from somebody who was shy, and we have seen the impact of individuals, and she's not the only one. She's just my favorite example. But we have many examples of, you invest in one human being, they can do so much, and they work much harder than me. And so we need to, we cannot, we must believe in people. we must believe that even as if they were able to live in a difficult place, they are really strong, much stronger than we are. They're more resilient. But we need to bring out the best in them. And in communities, there are so many heroes. And that's why I'm very passionate about this work. I have met so many underground heroes. Kita janganlah pandang rendah ya. Mereka ni sebenarnya when you give them time, dia dah kenal you, dia betul-betul trust you, baru dia akan reveal their true strong self. Of course, they are the ones who are also not very good lah. But you must identify what we call the gems lah in the communities. But it takes time to get to know them. So anyway, so we did many programs. So this is an example of how we work with multiple partners. So something for the university, I think UIA has done this, quite interesting. Maybe you want to think about this approach. One of the things that we, as you know, as young people, we must learn how to work in a team. So maybe in order to do a community engagement projects, you get them to work with different students from different faculties or different discipline. That is, I think, quite an interesting way to approach that. So this is again different organizations, and you bring them together and see how they can come up with a solution, rather than just one faculty at a time. Okay, I'm going over time. So this is with one organization that we worked with Shepherd Services in Sabah. So they did multiple things. They looked at gender-based violence because unfortunately this location, there's a high number of teenage pregnancy as well as sexual violence. And then they looked at their economic needs and also looked at ensuring that there's enough women leaders. And with that, they were able to reach out to 2,000 over beneficiaries and many good indicators. So I wanted to share, this is another example of building the community punya expertise from being very shy and then addressing a very difficult issue like sexual violence. The community decided that they needed to create a shelter in Tambunan, in the kampung, for those girls who unfortunately, has experienced this, rather than having to go for shelter all the way to Kota Kinabalu. Their own initiative, so on the ground, right there. So another example of that, Okay, my last slide, very fast, because I'm running out of time. So I want to say, so of course, when we do community development, essentially we are doing community engagement, So what are the lessons learned that we had on community engagement? Number one, identify who your stakeholders are. And stakeholders can be, as I mentioned, many different groups of communities. So you must understand who are the relevant officers, federal, state, district, and local levels, including Ketua Kampung and Tok Batin. And then when you look at community members, get to know them. Sebab quite often kita ni, typical lah, I'll ask somebody, so beli masuk kampung, you jumpa siapa? Or how do you identify who you want to work with? Oh, Ketua Kampung dah beritahu kita. Tapi Ketua Kampung ni ada banyak biasnessnya sebenarnya. So they have their biasness. So you are not being fair. And not always, some Ketua Kampung are very good. Some tend to choose to be family members atau kawan. So you need to find a way to get to know other what we call informal leaders. Other actually. And some of them, and you need to get to know, ask him to meet different people, go around the kampung or PPR, get to know people, including what we call the unofficial leaders. All these areas are the unofficial youth leader, women leader, ataupun what we call abang kawasan lah. You can ask me another time what that means. But get to know, these are the people who really know what's on the ground. And then if you are going to be doing some kind of support there, we always like it if you use the local resources, kedai-kedai runcit. So kalau you nak buat food aid pun janganlah beli kat Maidin. Belilah kat kedai runcit tu because you help the local economy. So you need to find out. Or grocery shops, And then service stakeholders lah. Sometimes maybe you are part of your project, you kata, okay, actually this community ni, the main concern is dia tak ada access to clinic. Janganlah bawa doktor volunteer jauh-jauh, tak sustainable. Look at whether there's a clinic kesihatan yang terdekat, make an agreement with them because there's more consistency, and find out what is the issue, why they cannot go. Because when you keep depending on so many outsiders, after a while they're going to lose interest. Or you say, oh dah tak ada duit, dah tak boleh buat project. No such thing. So you need to look at the local resources. So do a mapping when you go into communities. Next thing I want to emphasize, communication, trust and respect. So you must understand the local ways of communication. Meaning, if you are bukan orang Pahang, you pergi ke Kelantan, pilihlah student-student yang maybe boleh cakap bahasa Kelantan sebab lain sebenarnya, for example lah. Many examples like that. If you're going to Sabah, find a fellow student that is from Sabah and not only just any Sabahan, but maybe from that as much as possible. Always approach communities dengan adab. I cannot re-emphasize this. We are so rude sometimes. Kita kena selalu, jangan lupa. I find that di Malaysia ni kita dah lupa adab. So menghadap dengan adab, cakap baik-baik, jangan kita saudara, we are from some urban area and then we come in. No. Because when you do that, cara adab, cara local, like for example, if you go to certain orang asing communities, they're very shy. So you cannot be so aggressive. I'm quite aggressive person, but you should see me in other contexts. I dial down. My language changes. My body language changes. How I dress changes. I will adapt to the community. So I'm in a formal situation, I dress very nicely lah. But when I go turun Padang, my Adidas kampung dah keluar semua tu ya. So you must adapt to the community because and you must listen. Don't talk over people. Listen and observe. Spend a lot of time because when you listen and observe, you get more information. Always verify your information. Don't think that just because ketua kampung kat sini, that means ketua kampung tu dah tahu. Ketua kampung ni sebenarnya kebanyakan, not all, some of them isn't appointed position, yeah. So sometimes if you get their background, actually they come from a very simple background. Yet you expect them to be an expert in everything. No, of course they are experts in certain things. So verify the information just to double check. And then conduct participatory methods of communication. So jangan tanya one person as much as possible. If you want to get information, do different focus groups, get different people, do it in cara santai, don't do it so formal. Sometimes, I have conducted focus groups on bawah pokok. I don't care. So when people say, oh kena buat dalam dewan ke apa, I kata no. Macam mana you all nak buat? Kita buat cara itu. So you follow their ways because then they are in their natural environment, they will speak better, yeah. And the other thing that I must also emphasize, make sure that you're accountable. Don't rush the process as well. So sometimes we are under deadline, right? Project kena habis masa ni, kena submit paper. But it's your time, not their time. They sibuk sebenarnya. So look at, ask them. Of course we can, but what time we can? Because sekarang we can, they're busy. So adapt to their time as much as possible, yeah? And their capacity as well. Now, the other important thing I want to emphasize, lastly, is collaboration too obvious. I've mentioned that, is accountability and transparency. So many communities have told me, Anita, and we have been accused of the same thing, and we have done it, we are trying to improve. Kita, orang tu dah datang, dia dah buat projek, lepas tu hilang terus. Kita tak tahu apa jadi. Especially research, I'm going to emphasize this. Dia dah buat research, tapi kita tak dengar pun outcome tu. Kita tak tahu pun impact apa kepada kita. Cannot. You must go back. Respect this community and go back to them and tell them, okay, we have done this, we have done that. Follow up, don't forget them. So our partners do that. So a good partner that we have, the kind of partners that we choose is regardless of whether we get funding from them, they are with the community. Those are our favorite partners because it doesn't matter. It's not about funding. It's about your commitment to the community. So if you have, gotten research, go back to them and say, okay, kita dah buat research ni, kita nak buat apa. Or if you have made certain decisions with some of, say ketua kampung, tanya ketua kampung dah share kat dengan komuniti lain. Dah beritahu tak mereka yang sama apa yang akan jadi. So a lot of be accountable to them. Don't go off, because when you go off, you make it harder for future people to come in. So one of the reasons why we had problems entering communities is because they have distrust. Oh, ini NGO lain lah masuk buat benda sama lah tu. So we have to gain so much trust for them to overcome the bad history of working with other people. Never mind, I'm going to be very transparent, including political parties and all that, who come on one off and they go. So we have to convince them that we're not like them. We are here really to sincerely help you. We are here to listen to you and really. So that is at the heart of it what community engagement is from our perspective. Yeah? So I'm so sorry I took so much time. That's all I would like to conclude, and I'm open to any questions and answers. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anita. That is so refreshing and also very extensive explanation about community engagement. So just few questions here that I have. The first one is that you mentioned just now in the beginning of the slide about the catalytic change. Yayasan Hasanah look into project that has this catalytic change. Could you elaborate on that? How do you define that project would be catalyst? How do you?
Okay. Okay, so one of them is looking at the current situation. So for example, a catalytic change can be this group of farmers, dia dah lama buat cara farming traditional. Okay, but we know that the way that they're doing it is not effective and they need to innovate. They don't innovate, but they need to use innovative ways to increase the yield of their harvest and to make it easier for them. Especially, and then also we need to look at how we can attract the youth. So kita will support programs that will bring for example, yang typical that suddenly hydroponics. So that can be, even kalau bring hydroponic, kita tanya how much can harvest and maintenance. So it can be catalytic because it can be easily replicated. But it sounds easy, but there are many components to it. That's one example. Another one is that we had one university that came in with a polybag system of growing rice. So that can be, so it's new systems. That's one. Another way is also the different approaches lah. So some will come. There was one, and when maybe catalytic is something that's never really been done before, but can be replicated lah. So a new way of doing things. So like for us, we keep getting the same programs in terms of the same way of entrepreneurship training, but it's not really getting them to scale. But if you have projects where the entrepreneurship training will lead to them being matched to, say, for example, a big company, for them to be able to have a steady income, that's potentially catalytic lah. So just some examples of that. So
Okay.
something that you can do a little bit of, and other people can take on later on. So it's not about us doing everything.
Okay, okay, all right. Okay, I think sekejap I am having problem with my camera. A moment, yeah. Let me switch camera. Okay, second one, Puan Anita,
Mhm.
is a question that is related to you mentioned just now about the importance of stressing on well-being of the community. Now, while doing this with your vast experience, how do you see digital divide among those marginalized community? Is it huge? Is that a potential thing to address, say for example, for this university student to come in?
It is, but you have to think. Okay, so yes, definitely, digital divide is a big issue. But um, there are multiple issues. One is internet access, lah, whether you have Wi-Fi or not. But you need to look at whether there is other solutions like bringing in. I've heard before, but we've never really shown. But you've got to be looking at different ways that internet access can be brought in, including through satellite means, which can be expensive, but
Mm,
something to because that's essentially no
mm,
internet. Okay, that's one level. If there is an internet, then you have to look at, is there data? Now, data can cost. So of course now nowadays, I think I can't remember which agency it is. You have your
mm,
laser. So again, look at the resources there and see whether that can be used lah. Thirdly is then how do you use? So we normally, like, we get a lot of requests. Oh, not the computer. It's not about the computer
mm. Okay.
because maintenance, licensing, all that is a problem. So you look at what they have first and see whether you can use
Mm,
that. And then looking at open source. No, so yes, it is a digital divide, but think it through lah. And then what is it that you want to learn? Because of course you cannot teach too advanced things because number one, it takes too much data. And secondly, you have to look at identifying what is the understanding of the individuals that you work with. You kena faham. So one of the things that we know, we always ask what is their educational background, and you're going to see they pass standard six ke PMR ke tidak. In some cases they may not be able to read and write. Don't assume that, but maybe and all that. Because before you jump into looking at the digital punya issues lah, because there are many complexities around that. And then look at existing things, and then sometimes this is where again it's very good if your students learn how to approach corporate not us like we do long term, but go up to Microsoft, go up to teach them how to look for sponsors, corporate fund,
mm,
um, whoever to help this community. But again, it's making sure that not only are they trained how to use it, but check in on them, say 1 month later, ada tak guna app, was it useful tak for you, kalau tidak kenapa. So also do that other thing, follow through lah. But yeah, that's definitely, and you may want to choose that you want to work with adults or you want to work with students. And
mm,
I think lastly, one of my
mm,
biggest concern is that as if you're going to do this for children and students, please make sure that they're aware about access to pornography and cyberbullying and grooming. So
mm.
that's why we forget that we're always thinking, oh, education, education, education.
Yep.
All these other things that cause our young children to be in trouble is forgotten. So you must expose them to the usefulness of the digital gadget as well as the challenges, including scammers. So it needs to be comprehensive. Kalau boleh, yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, I have this one last question. Boleh ya, Panita? That's okay. You mentioned just now about the importance of community leadership, yeah, basically. And it is advisable ataupun it is good to have localized community leader. So in that sense, walaupun Universiti Malaysia Pahang, we are located in Pahang, but our students comes from all over Malaysia. So we have this one plan as well to have them to do projects in their own hometown. So
Great.
how you see this? Is this a good approach, having them to think of a project that could contribute to their hometown or to the surrounding
Absolutely.
area? So that's
Absolutely. I'm happy to hear that because we need to have, so people always say like, oh, kita kena cari local icon. I say it's not about icon. It's about locals who help locals themselves. because you know the best. So I think that's great. So it's good that they go back to their kampung, find out for themselves. Because I think so. Some of the things that we did is to teach our community members how to identify issues beyond the usual tak ada air and all that. No, it's to think it. So it gives them a way to analyze actually what is the real issue behind not having water, for example. Is it just loosely saying, oh, it's government's fault? Okay, it is, but to understand which is the government agency in charge. Why are they not doing it? Kenapa? Is it because no? So for water, there's a lot of things macam gravity, access, and all that, and it gets them to understand the community more and to definitely give back to the community. So they become champions within the community, and they become local leaders. So I'm glad to hear that rather than them going to another community, kan dia dah faham language too, and with that also they can understand how to bring other resources from the university to the community as well, leveraging on that. That's great.
Okay. I've once heard this saying says that identifying issues is the first step of solution.
Exactly. Yeah, but how you identify, like, a lot of people they rush through the identifying part, and they make a lot of assumptions. They come with a lot of our judgments. So you must be very open, and don't be judging, and don't make assumptions. Put away your assumptions at the door. Even though you may be orang kampung yourself, if you're going to another kampung, it's not your kampung. Mungkin ada lain issue. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much for your sharing and for your answers. So on behalf of University Malaysia Pahang, we look forward, insyaAllah one day untuk nak collaborate dengan Yayasan Hasanah. But we look forward as well to this workshop. Hopefully students can come and articulate their ideas so that next year, insyaAllah, when we plan ataupun when we work out this plan, it will be not to say a success because of its short time, tapi at least kita dah ada pathway. We will have a good pathway to a better community engagement, insyaAllah.
Okay. Can I make just one suggestion? Maybe what you can do rather than each time it's a new place, then you have continuity. It's the same location, but every year some projects are continuity lah. Daripada you pergi lepas and then that's it lah.
Then you can measure the long term effect.
Yeah, and you can compare the difference between the short term impact of the longer term. But anyway,
okay.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. InsyaAllah. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.